So for those who I haven't met yet, which are good, maybe some of you, I'm Theresa Conley, a principal planner over in the statewide planning unit and kind of Zachary's counterpart, implementing the updated TPR. And in that role, or one of the hats that I'm wearing is managing the multimodal inventory project, which is pretty big and exciting. And Alex and I are going to share a little bit about the project and then try to relate it back to the work that you all do on a daily basis. So I'm going to start with just the higher level, and then hopefully we'll have some time for dialogue as well. All right, next slide. So I'll give a quick project overview, highlight some of the data sets, and do more of a deep dive into the attributes of some of the data sets, and then that can be the tie-in to modeling, and then discussion. Next slide. All right, so the core project purpose, and this is something we got to keep our eyes on as even a project management team, is to support cities and counties with their transportation system plans and to ensure, help ensure compliance with the updated TPRs. The rules were amended to really bullet point out a much more thorough existing conditions analysis, basically. And before my time, even when the rulemaking was underway, ODOT received feedback. We're going to want some help building out this data set. Some of you may have given us that feedback. So this project is the result of that. And I say we have to keep our eye on the prize because we get excited about all the potential uses of this data, right? And how we can build on it in the future. But our budget is only so big. And this is a pretty aspirational sort of project already. So project objectives are to really do this work at scale, hopefully save some money across the TSPs, and have the side bonus of a hopefully statewide consistent data set that we can leverage for other types of work. We want the data to be locally owned, especially as it is now, for jurisdictions to continue to own and manage the data and utilize it as they need to. But then also, let's talk about how we can keep rolling up the data over the longer term at a statewide level for statewide uses and regional uses, just to maximize the usability. And so to that end, a core objective is a long-term data management and maintenance strategy. We won't actually, quote unquote, construct the strategy because we don't want to cross the line over into an IT project. So it's a lot of communication and coordination that we'll be doing over the next year. And we've just started planting the seeds for, hey, let's start thinking about this. Because we know it's going to take many conversations to get to a strategy. So here's a general synopsis of the project workflow. Our team has done a lot of work on, they've done an initial assessment of what data is out there right now publicly, kind of just a broad brushstroke sweep of what we have, what we're working with, and where the gaps might be. We've started to move into this iterative cohort model that's in a circle, and this is where we're working one-on-one with jurisdictions, metro, regional bodies as related to those cities and counties, to dig deeper into the data. Okay, share your actual data set with us. Let's dig into it, what's missing, and then have those conversations about, okay, you have some sidewalk data. Do you want to replace it with this new data, or the data logistics? So having those individual conversations with each city and county. And there's 48, not counting the regional bodies and other partners. So we've adopted a cohort model. We have about 6 pilot communities that kicked off in late last year, and we anticipate providing data to them, I'll say early summer. And then we have a 2025 cohort that we've kicked off early this year, and we're just starting those conversations. And then we'll have the largest cohort in 2026, and that's just to manage workflows and then also learn as much as we can in these early months. And we're definitely learning a fair amount. And then one thing that is important with iteration is not just with these cohorts, but even our deliverables are iterative in a sense, especially as we work with the pilot communities. Oh, we didn't think of this, or we have to adjust the attribute in one way or another, or develop a kind of a proxy. If we can't get a sidewalk condition from AI, then let's have those conversations with local agencies and iterate that back into the process. Okay, next slide. So data sources, number one, local jurisdictions. We want to build on what data is already there, and also ODOT data. We have received our first bits of AI data, and we're digging into it and getting excited, but also sometimes scratching our head. That's happening right now behind the curtain. And we're starting to have some preliminary conversations, especially with the pilot communities, to like just get into the weeds so that we can, iterate improvements. But we're excited. We're excited to see where this goes. The AI is working with really high resolution aerial imagery, so we're hopeful that we'll get good data from it. And of course, local agencies are critical for the QA/QC process to the degree they have capacity. And our team also is doing QA/QC throughout the process. Okay, so let's dig into the data. Am I on track time-wise? You can just nudge me if I'm going long. So what are the data sets? It's multimodal, right? So we'll have vehicle and freight facilities, and these are the layers underneath. Bike and ped facilities, transit facilities. And then there's on the side other relevant data. The rules require key destinations to be defined in transportation system plans, also crashes. We don't think that this is the project to say, hey, Portland, these are your key destinations, right? That's a local conversation. So we're going to, our intent is to build out the structure, the schema for that, and then let those local conversations happen. And also the crash data, that way you can pool it at the time of your TSP. So in italics, there are new data. We're pretty excited to have bike routes, ped routes, and crossings derived from the AI data. And some, like the transit facility, most of the transit data we'll be able to pull from GTFS. So we're definitely working with existing data sources. Again, next slide. Okay, digging into the data sets. So all per the rules, all of the data sets need to include these attributes, including condition, land use context. That's kind of a sticky one, and that's hey, we'll develop a schema that hopefully works for everybody, and then you work with it at the local level. And that can be a foundation too to talk with ODOT about the bud urban context as well. So we're trying to parlay that into there. Maintenance, responsibility, ownership, functional class, these are all required pieces. Next slide. Okay, so digging into bicycle routes. These are some of the additional attributes specific for bike routes. I'm highlighting some because I want to lead this conversation towards how we can use this data for LTS, level of traffic stress, for example. So type, width, condition, the presence of a buffer or median refuges. These are all attributes that will be produced via the project. And through the AI, we are getting minimum and maximum for width for segments. And then also thinking towards LTS data, this is what we're pulling from or plan to provide with the roadway data sets. That includes functional classification, number of travel lanes, lane width, posted speed. And then I have a question mark here on pavement. What lines for each lane and also separate center lines for sidewalks and then the bike lane. So it's pretty detailed data that we'll be getting through the vendor Ecopia, not just the roadway center line, but for each lane. And so hopefully from that we can get towards parking and some of the other inputs. And I want to flag intersection data. That's something people get excited about that we'll be kind of receiving on the side through the project. Here is just a snapshot of the data in the city of Ashland. So you can see what the bike and pedestrian crossings there in the black dashed line, ped facilities in red, and bike facilities in blue. So this from up here, it looks pretty good, right? And we're digging into it now as we speak. And so from the AI vendor, we'll be getting bikeways, sidewalks, off-street facilities, crossings, and intersection points. And then there's a note here about the restrictions around the use of the vendor data, and we've shared that with many of you in the room, I think, are your team members, just about external downloads of the data. You will have unfettered use, and so will your consultants. Next slide. Okay. So where we're at right now, as I mentioned earlier, we're working with the pilot communities, testing and learning a lot. And then we're also starting to dig in with the 2025 cohorts and plan to have that data released by the end of the year, and then same cycle for the 2026 cohort. So we're doing quality control on the initial AI data. And like I said earlier, beginning to have these discussions about long-term data management and what kind of model would work. Would it be like a centralized model or local or regional? Would it be status quo for the existing data sets and a new configuration for the sidewalk data? These are all question marks. We have started to send out project update emails every other month, and then we are scheduled to have 3 virtual briefings over the course of the project. And the next one we're targeting for early summer. So if you want to sign up for project updates, you can go to our Metropolitan Transportation Planning website, and there should be a little sign up button on there for that email list.
So I'm sure there's lots of questions about all that. I probably have questions too. But anyways, it's big and exciting stuff. And so the modeling group is regularly talking about like, okay, what can our models utilize from that data set? So unfortunately, we were thinking about how to time this, and I wanted to go after Theresa's next steps because we saw her schedule. And so on the ABM schedule, the important thing here is that estimation kicks off in 2025. So if you click the next slide, conflict, right? Like we don't have all of the data across the state by the time that we need it for estimation. So we really want to use as much of this data, lots of this data that's going to be collected at a high expense. I don't know if we want to say it's like you pull the, like, it's like a lot of money. So we want to be able to use as much of that as possible in the estimation, but the timeline doesn't work out. So if you go to the next slide, so what we're attempting to do is be as aware as we can of what data we anticipate. So on the left is a copy of the slide that Theresa already showed, where talking about bike data that we anticipate to come, and thinking about, okay, when this data comes, how close is it going to line up to the definitions? And to be clear, the definitions on the right are still a draft in working form for what the end ABM definitions would look like. But do the definitions that we plan to use, will the new data sets slide into those as seamless as possible? So we're attempting to keep those two in coordination so that they line up as clean as possible. And in the meantime, since we can't have all the data that's being collected for estimation, to try and keep the definitions consistent and to populate the model estimation with as close to as possible, without duplicating all the expensive work that's occurring, get a good placeholder for estimation, which can always then be defined for the actual model inputs before a calibrated, validated model rolls out. So like in this example, we're attempting to pull OSM data for some of the bike inputs for at least ODOT's models as a proxy for what will eventually come at hopefully much higher quality out of this multimodal inventory work. So then the next slide, I would just also show, so some of the data we need for estimation, some of the data, like in this case, really detailed intersection and roadway inventory data will be great when we actually dial in how a given roadway is needed. That level of roadway representation specifics likely isn't needed for estimation. Estimation, we just need a broad level of congestion skims, not route by route delay. Route by route delay comes into calibration validation. So for this, I think we're good waiting until 2026. Anyways, the point is we're watching all components and trying to get the pieces in estimation when we need it, and then have everything else flow into calibration validation and be ready, and the model be ready to absorb as much of this data as possible. I think that's mine. So turn to questions. And are there any other closing statements?